Ruslan.
Speaking of how much I dislike the public school system, recently, a California teachers union head was slammed as a hypocrite for taking his kid to school while saying that schools shouldn't reopen. You cannot make this up. The utter hypocrisy with the pandemic safety protocol is next level. The head of a California teachers union has been blasted as a hypocrite. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. The head of the blasted as a hypocrite after he was caught dropping off his 2-year-old daughter at her private preschool, despite saying it was unsafe for children to be back in the classroom, according to a report. Meet Matt Myers, white man with dreads. I think it's hilarious that they pointed that out. white man with dreads and president of the local teachers school union. He's saying it's unsafe for your kid to be back at school, all the while dropping his kid off to a private school. Myers, president of the Berkeley Federation of Teachers, has fought for what he called the gold standard for the educators, saying schools should only reopen to in-person learning when the teachers are vaccinated, among other criteria. So here is this guy, Myers, president of the Berkeley school system, complete, utter, just hysterical that this is happening. This is no different than our governor here in California, who is saying that people can't be together, saying that you got to stay home for the holidays. All along, he's out in public without a mask on, indoors, having $1,000 dinners. Right? This is the insanity that we're dealing with here in California. By the way, I wear a mask. I think you should practice safety, social distancing, protect the vulnerable, all the above. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. However, the utter hypocrisy here in California is just next level with some of this looniness of folks saying stuff like, yeah, I don't think we should reopen schools until we get A, B, and C. All along, you are sending your kids to a private school and just utterly being hypocritical. Now, some of this stuff is even hilarious because there's articles like this coming out from the New York Times that says why opening windows is a key to reopening schools. Why opening windows is a key to reopening schools. I cannot make this up. So apparently, if we think about just common sense, if everybody's in a room together and there's no open windows, the air circulates. And if somebody's infected, they do this simulation, if somebody's infected, then they will spread it to the other people, even if they're practicing social distancing and wearing a mask. But if you open a window and you create some circulation where the fan blows out of the window, then you can avoid this spreading, right? So it's like, open the fan. Have a window open with the fan. Now, it shouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you're going to open schools, you probably should open the windows, right? Like they wrote this scientific article about how ventilation is important and opening windows is a good idea. Like, yeah, you probably should open a window if there's a flu or a pandemic happening and you don't want people to get sick. Maybe you should consider opening the windows. I don't think we needed an utter scientific article on New York Times to explain this to us because it's fairly straightforward. Now, there are things like Texas is opening 100% apparently, which that sounds wild to me. I'm not gonna sit here and cap. But this notion that we just have to follow the science when the science really keeps changing. Remember initially, hey, masks are bad, don't wear masks. Fast forward a year, hey, you need to double mask. Initially, hey, you can get once the vaccine's here, everything will be fine, we'll be back to normal. Now they're saying, hey, I heard a doctor, I think on NPR, and he literally said, if two people were both vaccinated, and they were together and they had on masks, I would feel comfortable with them hugging. This is not how you get more people to take the vaccine, okay? Like, this is not not how you do it. It's not how you go about it. Telling people that, yo, by the way, you get this and you gotta stay wearing masks and you gotta stay social distancing. At some point, people are just gonna say enough is enough. At some point, you're gonna look at the statistics in California and you're gonna compare them to Florida, where people land in Florida and it seems like they get this thing within 48 hours of being there. And Florida and California literally handle this thing completely different, but are getting the same results if we're talking about ICU hospitalizations and the death rate. I did not make that up. Go look it up for yourself when you look at the actual numbers. And so, these are just some things to think about, and these are just some things to say, hey, I know we should follow the laws of the land and we should be respectable and we should submit to authority. But at some point, we do need to re-infuse some degree of critical thinking. At some point, we do need to look at the science. At some point, we do need to say, yeah, opening windows is probably a good idea. Ventilation and air circulation is probably a good idea. I don't understand how this is not a commonsensical approach to dealing with these controversial issues. Because what's the alternative? Like, what, we're just gonna be locked down indefinitely? We're just gonna wear masks indefinitely, right? I don't got no problem with masks. I don't got no problem with just chilling at the crib. But is this now like the world that we're gonna live in? Or at some point, do people have to self-assess and say, you know what, I gotta be careful. I gotta practice social distancing, but we may need to start reopening and we may need to start getting back to some type of normalcy for the sake of the kids that are going to school, for the sake of the people that are dealing with mental health issues, as addiction, as overdoses, as depression, as domestic violence are all through the roof. Maybe these are some things we need to be thinking about while being respectful and while living out, following the laws of the land and submitting to the authorities. Just some things to think about. I don't know, but I tell you what, right now in California, it is utterly insane. It's just nonsense. And I just got back to going to a gym today, and it was like, yo, this is great. Like why would you shut down gyms? Like, there's been no connection to gyms being the outbreak epicenter for this thing. It's usually people ignoring these goofy laws and meeting together in homes anyway where the outbreaks happen. But yet they shut down gyms, which is one of the best releases if you're dealing with tension and stress and anxiety. Most folks go to the gym and work through that. We've had these shut down. So I know some of you guys are like, Ruslan, you sound like a radical rightist conservative. No, I don't. Just look at what's happening in California and then compare what's happening in Florida, and you'll notice that, hey, the results are actually quite similar, and maybe, just maybe, we overreacted to this because our science was different initially. So how do we pivot and move in the right direction? And how do we as Christians push back on some of these shenanigans and say, okay, listen, we're going to respect the folks in authority. However, let's think through this stuff a bit more. Let's have some dialogue. We're not going to be flippant. We're not going to be disrespectful, but we do need to be firm and have some good dialogue on these things. So those are my thoughts on this entire situation. I thought this whole California teachers union rep just being a complete hypocrite, just like Governor Newsom being a complete hypocrite, which, by the way, there's 1.8 million people who signed the bill to recall Governor Newsom. That looks like it's going to happen. This is interesting that this keeps coming up. This hypocrisy keeps coming up. It's a lot of do as I say, not as I do. And that's not how anybody leads, by the way. True leadership, servant leadership, the leader goes first, and the leader sacrifices first. And the leader is the one that goes before the people and says, this is what we're on, and I'm going to sacrifice, lead by example. And that's just unfortunately not what's happening in California. It's extremely frustrating. And if you're not in California, you maybe it just doesn't make sense to you. But that's my idea. That's what I think we should be doing. Let me know what you think.
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Joshua the King came down and bore it all. Yeah. Conversations front of the fireplace. All of my mistakes, how do I erase? Wanna operate at a higher pace. Birth pains causing the body to dilate. On a first name basis with the worst pain.